In this video, I'm going to be painting up the mechs from 5 legendary characters from the Battletech universe, specifically from the Warrior Trilogy, that excellent set of novels by Michael A. Stackpole. The inspiration for this video came from those novels and also this Battletech Legends book, which is a great resource. These novels tell a gripping story during the 4th Succession War period, which in my opinion was the best period in Battletech. The first mech belongs to Hanse Davion of the Federated Suns. This is his BattleMaster, and I got this from the A Game of Armored Combat box. The most prolific character in the book is obviously Justin Allard, and his most well-known mech is Yen-Lo-Wang. And his key rival was Grey Noton, who piloted a Rifleman known as Legend Killer. Both these mechs are readily available from the Battletech Essential set, which you can get from Target. Justin Allard also piloted a Valkyrie earlier on, and the book also features one of the most well-known mercenaries, Kell. His archer and the Valkyrie are available from the Inner Sphere Command box set, which is an excellent set. And finally, I feature Yorinaga Kurita's Warhammer battle mech that led the feared Jinyosha regiment. Now this mech is actually one that I got from the Battletech RPG Tactics game. If you can find these online, they make really good battle mechs. As you can see over here for a Rifleman, it really has almost the same size as Catalyst's latest battle mechs. Just made a quick adjustment to the SRM pod on its right shoulder so it looked like the one in the Battletech art. It is horizontal instead of vertical. For all these mechs, I'm going to start out with a zenithal highlight, which is basically a black prime followed by a white prime applied at an angle. So apply the black prime all the way around it first of all, and then after it's dried, you're going to be switching to a white primer. And this is going to be applied as a light to medium dusting all the way around the mech from a 45-degree angle. This creates a fairly bright shade up on top and then darker shadows in the recesses and at the bottom. In order to make the highlights stand out a little bit more, I'm going to be using white paint and a makeup brush and applying a dry brush onto the high peaks of all the models. So I want to go ahead and just hit them like this with just a little bit of residue on the brush, and then it will transfer the white onto the model and make it look a lot more prominent like this model on the left compared to one I didn't do on the right. I start with broadsword silver speed paint. This is a nice metallic silver paint that is going to go on all the weapon areas. You'll want to look either in the Legends book if you have it, or just go online and look at the art for all these different miniatures. Wherever there's a barrel for a laser, a PPC, or any exposed missile pod, go ahead and paint those silver. It will just allow those weapons to stand out more. This is something I like to do universally on all the mechs regardless of what faction they are. It helps you quickly identify what weapon systems are on them and also makes the mechs look a little bit more distinctive. On some mechs like this Rifleman, it has a lot of exposed vents. I like to paint those silver as well to give them points of interest. For this archer, I also paint the inside of the LRM doors silver to make it look more industrial and to give it a more unified look with the missile pods. If you see any rearward facing lasers, paint those silver as well. Now I'm going to start focusing on each individual hero and their mechs. And I will start with no other than Hanse Davion, the first prince of the Federated Suns, and his iconic BattleMaster that you will see on the Legends book as well as a Game of Armored Combat box. The best way to imitate this rich deep blue is to use highlight blue speed paint from Army Painter, and I apply this with a fairly large brush onto the mech, just being careful not to go over anything that I had painted silver earlier. Also, while you're painting this, you want to make sure to not paint the cockpit. You want to leave that white. We'll be putting another speed paint in that area. The next speed paint is going to be Grim Black, and I applied this right on top of the blue into any of the joints of the mechs. If you're ever doubtful on where to apply this, just look at any of the available art for a BattleMaster, but generally these are going to be along the elbow joints as well as the knee joints. I also decided to use this black on some of the lasers, like these rear mounted lasers, and some of the ones in the front just to give them a little bit of distinction. I then use blood red speed paint for the canopy of the Battlemaster. It really shades it very nicely, giving it dark recesses and a bright canopy. For the two canopy struts, I'm going to be using the new Ultramarine Blue by Army Painter Fanatics. This is a nice color that matches very well with the Allard blue, and you can line those two canopy struts with this. Now comes the fun part. This mech has two stripes running down the left of its body, and it is in red and white. Then there's the Federated Sons Brigade of Guard logo on the right thigh, and also the symbol of House Davion on the left hip. I start with pure red and matte white Fanatics paints, and this very fine detailing brush. To get warmed up, I go ahead and apply a red circle on the right thigh where the Brigade of Guard badge is going to be. I next freehand another red circle on the left hip. This is for the Davion logo. Now to start on those long lines, I start with red and then I apply the horizontal line first. This goes across the left foot, and then I move to the vertical line that starts from that horizontal line and works upwards. Bear in mind that the red line is actually more towards the right of the mech's leg. On the left, it's going to be the white line. So definitely bias it a little bit more to the right. And you also notice that the dragging motion of the brush is much easier to apply freehand lines. It makes it a lot easier to maintain the straight line. So don't try to paint it at an angle. Try to drag it in a straight line along the motion of the brush. Don't fight the brush. Even though the art in the Legends book doesn't really show the lines in the back, I do continue the lines down the back of the mech as well and connect it all the way down to the heel on the left hand side. After that, I imitate the horizontal line that was on the front of the foot. I do that the same on the back. I then switch to matte white, and it's going to be hugging more on the left hand side of the mech in the front. So you'll want to follow the red line and be careful not to overlap it. Try to keep it as straight as you possibly can. Again, the dragging stroke of the brush is truly key here. Drag the brush in a straight line, and this will help you really create nice, crisp straight lines. Also, one of the other things, the reason why I like to use a small detailing brush is that you can put nearly all the bristles of the brush down and the lines will not look too fat. It'll look nice, crisp, and thin. These lines were really fun to do, and it really adds to the distinctiveness of the battle mech. Next, I use Army Painter Fanatics Demonic Yellow, and I'm going to be using this for the halo around the Brigade of Guard insignia on the right thigh. I use plate mail metal to finish off the tiny sword symbol inside the logo. Onward to the Davion logo, I applied the same demonic yellow for all the sun rays that come out from the center of the Davion logo. So I applied this very carefully with the detailing brush and then just apply each individual line as carefully as you can. I again use plate mail metal and apply the sword logo in the middle of the field. And after this step, the insignias are done. I next use the pure red Fanatic acrylic paint and apply the number 24 just underneath the Davion logo on the left hip. There is also a larger 24 on the right chest, and for this I want to make it look a little bit more fancy. So first I apply the 2 and the 4 with matte white paint. I'm very careful here just to make sure I do not over smear these numbers. Just very careful brush strokes to form the 2 and the 4 on the chest. Once this white is dry, I'm going to be using pure red Fanatic acrylic paint and then even more carefully applying it within the field of white without overlapping it. This will create a white outline that surrounds the red letters. As a finishing touch, I wanted to make the canopy look like it's got a little bit of a glare. For this, I'm going to be using Burning Ore Fanatic paint. This is an orange color and it goes really well with the red speed paint. And this paint lays down really well. The Fanatics paints are quite fantastic. Definitely check those out. Next, I'm going to be painting up the two mechs that Justin Allard piloted. The first was his Valkyrie, which he used on Kittery, and then the second is the infamous Yen-Lo-Wang, a modified Centurion that he used on Solaris 7. Both mechs are a grayish white, and for this I'm going to be using Holy White Speed Paint. I generously apply it onto both mechs equally, onto all areas except for ones that I've already painted silver. Just like before, I now switched to Grim Black Speed Paint and I applied it onto all the joints. Now there's going to be joints on the elbows, on the knees, and also for this particular mech, the joints that connect the hip to the legs are also exposed. You want to paint those black. The cockpit glass of the Valkyrie looks reddish, and for this I'm going to be using blood red speed paint. I just pull it into the recesses of this glass area and it naturally shades itself. Looks really good. Really simple process. The glass on the Yen-Lo-Wang is depicted to be yellow. I use Zealot Yellow Speed Paint, and again I pull it into the area where the glass should be. It naturally shades it, and in one step you're done. Next, let's apply the yellow and green markings of the 1st Kittery Training Battalion onto the Valkyrie. Starting first with the yellow, I use Demonic Yellow Fanatic Paint, and I freehand that broad yellow stripe onto the right arm and also on the left leg. This step benefits from using smaller brushes. You do not have to use the most tiny detailing brush for this particular color of stripe. You can use something that's a little bit more broad bristled and it'll look just fine. While I'm using this yellow, I also noticed these two features in yellow, this stripe here as well as this little rectangle, so I paint on some yellow in these areas. They're minor features, but I think it's worth it. There's also a fairly tiny Davion logo on the right shin. This is smaller than what I had put in the BattleMaster earlier. It's going to be the same kind of method of putting a red circle followed by yellow sunburst and then a silver sword, but they're actually really small, so just kind of take your time and put it on. And even if it's not entirely accurate, it's fine. It's just a really small feature, but also something that you don't want to miss out. It just makes it look a lot better. And then there's the number 44 in two locations, one on the left shoulder and the other on the right chest. You want to use Army Painter's matte black Fanatic paint, and then just carefully freehand it in. This larger 44 is going to be on the left shoulder, and then a very small 44 is going to go on the chest area right here. Lastly, I'm going to be using this green skin Fanatic paint and finishing off the stripes on the right upper arm right here. You just want to make sure that you circle all the way around it, and then after that you're going to do the same thing with the left leg. And for this step, you'll want to use your smallest detailing brush because this line is fairly fine. And this basically concludes the Valkyrie. Next, we're going to apply this infamous rising sun marking all over Yen-Lo-Wang using pure red Fanatic paint and a fine detailing brush. You'll want to start with a round circle on his right chest. So I'm going to show you this sequence of steps where you can slow down and play back if you need to, but there's really a lot of intricate steps to do this correctly. You want to make sure that you always connect all the beams of light, and it starts narrow where it touches the circle on the right chest. From there, it emanates further out and becomes broader. So I'm going to show you this sequence of painting that you can follow, but you can also go back to pictures on the internet or the Legends book to truly see where all the dots connect. Again, you want to make sure that all the lines are always connected as it radiates out of that red circle. As I approach the rollover areas, as you can see here, I make sure to continue the beam over the flat surface of the shoulders just to give it continuity. Once you're done with this, the rays of the sun, which is the most difficult part, is basically done. Now you can pick out other features, for instance the pauldron on the left shoulder. You'll paint some areas of this red. As you reference the Legends book, you'll notice that not all of it's red, but the head, however, is almost completely red. So you want to take a slightly broader brush and then paint the entire head red, except for the visor area that you want to stay yellow. Moving on to the Centurion's right shoulder, the entire right shoulder is going to be red. On the tops of the legs by the hips on each side, there are some areas that look slightly triangular. Those areas are going to get red. There is this small stripe on each shin that gets red. And then there are these long red horizontal lines that are right by the ankle area. On the left arm with the hatchet, the top wrist area is going to get red, and then the shrouding all the way around the hatchet also gets red. This matches what is on the Legends book, and it looks really distinctive. On the right gun arm, there's going to be a few areas with red. I applied this strap that goes all the way around the top of the gun arm here. And also I apply some of these triangles at the tip of the muzzle. And along the side surfaces of that arm, I tried to stay faithful to the art as much as I can. I couldn't find anything that showed me what was happening at the back of the mech, so I basically took liberties on the back and just adorned several panels in red as I saw fit. And I also included some of the triangular motifs that I had put in the front of the mech, just to make everything look uniform. And that concludes the legendary mech Yen-Lo-Wang, and it's honestly not very hard. The next mech is Grey Noton's RFL-3N Rifleman with a lot of sneaky enhancements. For this mech, I'm going to be using Graveyard Grey and Slaughter Red. I paint the areas just behind the large lasers and autocannons with Graveyard Grey. And then also after that, I moved to the pods on top of the torso. They look like big shoulder pads. You want to apply them here. The antenna on top of its head, which looks like a wing, also gets this gray color. This panel that starts from the front and goes to the back of the lower torso gets gray. And on the legs, there are several sections that get gray. I'll be showing you here in these sequences, but basically the area above the knees, the sides of the calves, and also right by the hip area. Next, I move to Slaughter Red Speed Paint, which is a nice deep and dark shade of red that is going to go on the rest of the mech. I carefully avoid areas that I had painted silver or the Graveyard Grey, and I also avoid this area of the canopy right here. I want to leave it as white as possible. For the glass and the canopy, I'm going to be reusing Zealot Yellow that I used for Yen-Lo-Wang earlier. It works really well on that mech. It also does on this one. I next use matte white and matte black to freehand the logo on the right thigh. I start with black and I create a nice big circle using a very fine detailing brush. While I'm waiting for the black circle to dry, I use matte white and I add little teeth marks all along the length of the fuselage, top and bottom. So using a fine brush, you can just apply very simple, tiny triangles and it will look convincingly like teeth. Once the black circle is dry, I freehand in a tiny ghost inside of it. The artwork for this mech also shows a lot of little lines painted in purple along the legs of the mech. So for this, I used Cultist Purple Fanatic paint and again a small detailing brush. And then I freehand in parallel lines on the knee pads and also on the thighs. Even though these lines look fairly big compared to the artwork, it does work very well on the small miniature because it stands out, looks fantastic, and gives you a point of conversation whenever anybody looks at your miniature. There are also some swirls on the side of the fuselage that you can use this purple for. Go ahead and just make nice semicircles using single brush strokes. The last areas to get purple lines are the lower portion of the inner calves. Now that the tiny ghost on the right thigh is dry, I applied several small, minute dots for the eyes and mouth, and then a red circle for the target. And that concludes this legendary rifleman. Next, I'm going to be painting up the archer for the legendary mercenary Morgan Kell. If you've watched my other video on Battletech mercenaries, you already know how to paint up the Kell hounds. So I'm going to be using basically the same kind of method where I paint the entire thing blood red, only avoiding the areas that I painted silver earlier, and also the glass of the canopy, which you can see me avoiding here, keeping it white. Of course, if there are panels that you know are going to be painted black later and you want to leave them white, you can go ahead and do that, but I find it easier just to paint the whole thing red. I next use Grim Black Speed Paint, which is darker than the blood red, and will go on top of it without showing the lighter colored red underneath it. I'll let the video roll to show all the areas that I applied this Grim Black. I am following the art in the Legends book as closely as I can. For the green cockpit glass, I'm going to be using Plasmatic Bolt Speed Paint, and this is going to apply a nice vibrant green to this area. One generous dip of the brush in these two panels will do the trick. While you're painting, you may notice you missed something, like I missed these hands here, so I'm going to go ahead and use the silver plate mail that I had earlier and just kind of paint right over the speed paint. It's really no big deal. It's a very easy way to just cover up simple mistakes. And after the acrylic paint is dried, in this case the silver, I just put some wash in it to give it that depth and detail. I next used these acrylic colors from the Fanatic line, starting with the number 17 on the right knee. I applied this number 17 with matte white Fanatic paint. Using your smallest detailing brush will work well here. Onwards to the Kellhounds logo, I first apply red in a triangle right on top of the dorsal area, and then after that I use black to outline the triangle like this. And then I carefully freehand in the head of the wolf in the middle. And the ARC-2R Archer is done. Now we move on to Yorinaga Kurita's Warhammer, the nemesis to Morgan Kell. This mech has one of the easiest paint schemes. Just paint the entire thing gray floor gray. Avoid anything that you had put silver on earlier, but everything else just gets a generous application of gray. I then applied just a little bit of Grim Black onto the torso guns on the front of the Warhammer. I next switch to Plasmatic Bolt Speed Paint, which I apply onto the glass of the cockpit. For the markings on the mech, I use pure red Fanatic paint, and I apply first the circle of House Kurita on the right thigh, and then after that I'm going to use the same red to put a plus and a minus on the right upper arm of the mech. This is a very unique marking on this mech and makes it very distinctive. Speaking of details, there is a horizontal hazard mark strip on the right leg of the mech just above the ankles. I paint a simple yellow line in this area. I then follow up with matte black Fanatic paint, and with a detailing brush I draw an inverted S for the dragon on House Kurita's logo. I also carefully freehand in some black lines within the red plus and minus on the right arm. The next part is probably my favorite. I'm going to be freehanding in these ripple lines that you usually see in the Zen gardens that you would find in Japan. This step is really highly artistic and I find it very satisfying to do. You would use white paint and then with a careful detailing brush just create ever-growing semicircles, about 2 to 3 of them in one area, and then switch to another area, do an overlapping or an underlapping same pattern, and you would just continuously do this all throughout most of the lower left flag. That's how it shows in the Legends book, and you can make it look obviously a lot bigger than what you would see in the book, but again, on a small miniature it tends to stand out and really draws a person's eyes to it. On this backdrop of a simple gray mech, these details were truly awesome and strangely satisfying to do. After you're done with these ripple effects, Yorinaga Kurita's WHM-6R Warhammer is done. Now it's time to clean up the bases. I use some leather brown Fanatic paint and I apply it onto the tops of all the bases. This creates the illusion of dirt or soil, and I just do this on all the mechs. I next use some black primer and I just clean the periphery of the rims with them to make it look nice and crisp and black. The next step is optional, but I really love doing it. What I'm going to do is use matte white and my tiny detailing brush, and I'm going to write in the name of these legendary mech warriors right at the front of the base. This gives the miniature a special touch, and it tells your opponent, hey, I'm putting somebody really important on the table, and this is his or her legendary mech. Like here is Hanse Davion's BattleMaster, and then on the back of the mech, I actually put in the model of the BattleMaster in the back, because usually at this period in time, this legendary pilot piloted this specific variant of the mech. Besides positive identification, these markings also denote the front and the rear facings of the mech, which makes it really convenient. So if you like doing freehand painting, you like a slight challenge, and if this looks like fun, I highly recommend it. You will notice here that I'm painting the name Justin Xiang on Yen-Lo-Wang because in the middle portions of the trilogy, Justin actually took on his mother's Capellan Leao name. If you haven't read the books yet, I won't spoil it for you, but it's an awesome story arc. Next, I'm going to dress up the bases a little bit by using some Elmer's glue or white glue from the dollar store and some flocking. I apply just random patches of this glue and then I dab some of the flocking on top of it. It makes it look like patches of grass. I then seal all my work with gloss varnish followed by matte varnish. Here is a rotating view of Hanse Davion's Battlemaster, Justin Allard's Valkyrie, Justin Allard or Justin Xiang's Yen-Lo-Wang, Gray Noton's Rifleman, Morgan Kell's Archer, and Yorinaga Kurita's Warhammer. Now you can reenact that opening battle in the wilderness of Kittery, replay all the famous fights on Solaris 7, relive Hans Davion's brutal brawl inside the New Avalon Institute of Science, and relive the legendary duel between Morgan and Yorinaga on the planet of Nusakan. Thank you for joining me in this video, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Please join me for more Battletech content coming up, and until the next time, happy hobbying.